global company to try and get people to come into engineering.
To press for an additional £100 million a week for the NHS after Brexit. Theresa May's told ministers any Brexit dividend would be allocated according to priorities. Economist at the Nuffield Trust, John Appleby, has told Sheila Mr Johnson's proposal wouldn't go far enough.
It's been used to, over the long run, getting an extra 5 billion every year, not just 5 billion spread over 5 years, but an extra 5 billion every year. I mean, if that went on from this year, then there'd be an extra 25 billion spent by 2022.
Tsunami warnings issued for Alaska and parts of Canada following a powerful earthquake in the Pacific have now been cancelled. The quake, measuring 7.9, struck around 175 miles off the coast of Alaska's Kodiak Island early this morning. Justice Secretary David Gork says the concerns of victims should be at the heart of sex attacker John Warboy's parole conditions. The former taxi driver has been moved to a London prison ahead of his release. He was transferred from Wakefield in West Yorkshire to Belmarsh over the weekend. A body found in a river in Halifax has been identified as that of a missing 11-year-old girl. West Yorkshire police say Ursula Keogh was last seen yesterday afternoon. Her death isn't thought to be suspicious. This year's Oscar nominations have been announced in Los Angeles, with 3 British stars in the Best Actor category. LBC's Charlie Gerling has more.
Today's list saw nods for newcomer Daniel Kaluuya for Get Out, favourite Gary Oldman for Darkest Hour, and Daniel Day-Lewis for his swan song role in Phantom Thread. James Franco was snubbed though, despite winning the Golden Globe and Critics' Choice Awards. It follows multiple sexual misconduct allegations made against him in the last few weeks. Meryl Streep picked up her 21st Oscar nomination for her role in The Post. And Guillermo del Toro fantasy The Shape of Water was the biggest winner overall, with 13 nods.
And Britain's Kyle Edmund is going to face Marin Cilic in his first ever Grand Slam final. The Grand Slam semi-final, rather. The British number 2s through to the last 4 at the Australian Open after beating 3rd seed Grigor Dimitrov. The LBC Markets report a short time ago, the FTSE 100 was up 10 points at 77.25. The pound buys $1.39 and €1.14. LBC weather mostly cloudy with outbreaks of rain this afternoon, turning brighter in the north and west with some heavy showers, feeling mild, a high of 13 degrees. Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Thomas Watts.
Hello, I'm a new idea. Your competitors don't know about me yet, but you will if your phone system is a Vonage phone system. That's because Vonage call plans start from just £12 a month. So instead of watching the minutes, you'll be looking out for new ideas like me that'll grow your business. Answer every opportunity with Vonage. Just visit vonage.co.uk or call 0203 435 8000. Excludes VAT at 20%. Terms and contract apply.
LBC travel, starting with the Blackwall Tunnel. It's closed southbound at the moment because of an accident involving a couple of vans. There are long delays backing up the A12 to the Bow roundabout where it meets the A11. If you're heading towards Southgate, the Bounds Green Road is blocked southbound at the junction where the road meets the North Circular because the van's overturned. And nearby on the North Circular Road in Finchley, one lane is still closed eastbound just before the junction with Great North Way because the lorry is broken down. There are some short delays on the approach. On the M40 in Oxfordshire, there's a lane closed northbound between junction 11 at Banbury and 12th and Game. There's been a multi-vehicle accident and there are delays on the approach. LBC Travel, I'm Ross Powell.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Sheila Fogarty.
Hello, good afternoon to you. I've been thinking a lot over the last few days about the experiences of and the rights of victims because I have been reading and finished over the weekend the book that's been written by Denise Fergus, the mother of James Bulger, the little boy who was murdered in Liverpool 25 years ago. And I've mentioned the trial a few times when we've talked about the nature of crime and the nature of evil and what should happen to young children when they commit serious crimes. And so the whole story is something that is very close to me. And what Denise Fergus, James Bulger's mother, has fought for really, with some success on a number of fronts, not total, but with some success. She has fought for the rights of victims, the voices of victims, and the experience experiences of victims and their families, those left behind if somebody is murdered. She's fought for them to be part of the picture and part of the decision making. And I'm actually going to be speaking to Denise after the programme is finished, and we'll broadcast that interview a little later in the week. But the topic has come up, not least you would have heard just in the news bulletin there, David Gauke, the Justice Secretary, saying that the concerns of and the feelings of victims should be central to what happens next with John Warboys. And I would argue, and again in my interview with Denise you'll hear more about that, I would argue that for a Justice Secretary to say that in the House of Commons, you can link that directly back to the battle that Denise Fergus has fought over the years for victims' voices to be heard in the criminal justice system. She's the only one, but she's a big voice in that fight, in that battle. Do you think that victims' voices are sufficiently heard yet? You look at the experience of Emily Maitlis and the man in prison for harassing her, for stalking her, and how he was able to still send letters from prison. You look at Denise Fergus's experience of wanting more information about the whereabouts and the decisions made about the boys, now men, who killed her son. And you look at the Warboys story and how some of the victims of John Warboys and complainants whose cases haven't yet been prosecuted were not told about his release. So clearly there are things that are still going wrong, and now another person, another victim, a family member left behind when somebody is murdered, the mother of a murdered schoolboy, has told an inquiry into the experiences of victims, that the killer has been able to goad her essentially from inside prison with blog posts about the murder, and how terrified she was that he'd be able to get out, or had got out, and would be able to reach her. She'll be with us in about half an hour actually, Lauren Lafave. She's the mother of Breck Bednar, the young man I'm talking about, young boy I'm talking about. Your experiences of crime, perhaps not as serious as these, did you feel that your voice was heard when the crime was investigated, when it was prosecuted? Are victims just left to fend for themselves too often when it comes to crime, perhaps especially serious crimes? Or did you find that you did get support from the police, from the criminal justice system? And there's also the argument, and again when I was reading the book about James Bulger, I was weighing all kinds of things up in my head about whether the victim, when it comes to the decision and the sentencing and the verdicts, is the victim central to that? Should the victim and his or her experiences be central to that, or the victim's family? Or should the law be as cold as ice in its delivery and base itself entirely around the law, not around the feelings of or the experiences of victims? The victim impact statements have crept in, haven't they, over the years? Again, largely because of Denise Fergus's fight over the years. Is that something that you are happy about? Victim impact statements and the victim being central to what happens next in the Warboys case, is what David Gauke has just said. Is that right, or is there a danger that it will dilute justice, that it will interfere with proper legal practice? I'd love to hear from Ryan on this as well. To what degree a victim should be listened to, should be considered in this? 0345 6060 973, the number to call. You can text 84850 or tweet at LBC. As I said, we'll hear from Lauren, Breck's mother, later on. Let me give you some details of that case. He was only 14 when online he was befriended by a stranger, an 18-year-old.
There we go.